All right, today we are going to make this little outdoor fireplace to put behind the dollhouse. Stay tuned and see how fun and easy this project is. All right, so we're going to make our little fireplace out of this plastic bottle. This happens to be it had orange juice in it from Minute Maid. I'm sure you can find other bottles. You want something about this height. It's just a little taller than the doll. So it's a little more than 6 inches tall. There'll be photos on the blog post. Also note what size it was. I don't remember. So I like it has these little indentations here. And I'm going to, hopefully very carefully, cut out one of these. Hopefully without cutting myself on camera. Be very careful when you're doing things like this. I don't want anybody to cut themselves. I'm going to turn the camera off and get this cut because I can't do it safely on camera, so I'll be right back. Alright, so off camera I was able to get that into a position where I could cut it much more safely so I wouldn't hurt myself. And I want you to, guys, when you're cutting things like this, be very careful. Put it where it's stable, where you can brace it up, and where you've got a good control over both the item you're cutting and your knife. And so you know exactly where your fingers are so you don't get hurt. I don't want anybody cutting themselves. So I cut the hole out of there. In addition to getting this bottle cleaned up and ready to go, I cut 4 pieces of just plain foam core. 3 inches by 4.5. One of them I'm leaving whole, intact. The top one, I lined my bottle up right on the edge, traced around it, and then cut around it with my knife. So I've got a nice round opening. This is going to be the top piece. Then 2 more pieces I measured over 1 inch from each end and 1/2 inch from the long end and cut a square out of. That way we can stack these up and glue them together. So let me get my glue and all my stuff together and I'll be right back. Alright, for some reason I forgot to get my glue. I cleaned my table off, part of my table off yesterday, and forgot to put the glue back. So I am going to put some glue on the bottom, and I'm using tacky glue because it's really the only glue I've got that's really safe to use with this. I thought about using E6000, and I looked it up. It's really not a safe glue to use in this application. So we are going to stick with tacky glue. Tacky glue will hold this, and once this is held in place, it will hold our fireplace unit. And once the finish is on it, everything will be a nice stable unit. So I'm stacking up these 2 that have the opening. And they are not exactly perfect. I somehow managed to not get them perfect. I am going to stop and take a picture here just so I can have it on the blog post. Sorry about that. But it's easier to take the picture now. Okay. Excuse me. I'm going to put glue on this. And I am going to put a little bit around the edge, although it probably won't really help a lot. I don't expect the glue to really stick to our plastic bottle very well. Okay, I just want to have this so it finishes off the top of this. All right, put that in, that way I can get everything down. Now line up your edges. And this glue will need to dry. So I'm going to set this off to the side and let my tacky glue get a good couple of hours of dry time. Then I'll come back and we'll do our next step. One important part I forgot to mention before I set this off to dry is make sure that your opening that you cut is in the front and is centered nicely over the front edge, because this is how we're going to access the inside of our fireplace. Almost glued that wrong. So all of a sudden, I was taking pictures, all of a sudden I realized, oh dear, I did that completely wrong. So yeah, make sure this is centered to the front. Important. Okay, now let's let it dry. All right, so this glue is set up enough we can work with it now, and I'm going to do paint on the inside of this. It's not just going to be paint though. I'm going to mix craft paint and baking soda. Just like we did, if you've watched my Beachside Bungalow series, this is pretty much the same mixture we used for the foundation on there. I want to do the inside of our fireplace with a black finish. I'm trying not to do too, that's probably way too much. Let me pull some of that out. I can use it for the outside. I have a bad habit of making way too much paint, and I don't need that much. I'm only doing, not even the whole inside, because I won't be able to reach the whole inside, but the parts that we can see will do. And any craft paint, preferably probably a cheap one, since you are going to be mixing it with the baking soda. And do this in a disposable container, because this is not going to come out. I think I'm going to need there's a little bit of water in there. A little more paint. And I won't make you sit through watching me do the whole thing, but you want something pretty thick. Let's bring this up to the camera. It's pretty thick. But what the baking soda thickens it up, and it gives it some texture. It'll look kind of like, well, it works for a stucco finish. It works for things like this. We want this to look kind of like stone inside. And black will make it look like it's all smoky inside. It will also block light. And the baking soda will help it to stick to the plastic. So this is probably going to take me a while, because I got to work around that little hole. So I am going to turn the camera off. I'm going to get this coated inside. Be sure, I don't know if I mentioned, use an old brush in case it doesn't come out. I mean, don't use your really good brushes, don't use your good containers. This is kind of a messy process. So I am going to get this done. I'll take a picture when I get it finished, get it painted, and then when it's dry, I'll come back and we'll work on the outside. All right, right now our fireplace interior is drying. I've got it coated really well. I took some pictures. But I'm going to cover that base that goes around it with some faux stones, some fake stones. So I'm using egg carton. You guys, if you've watched my channel, you've seen me do this before. So I just got a variety of gray and brown paints. I'll put them out here and I'll tell you what I've got. And you can use any colors, whatever you want to use. This is Burnt Umber by Art Advantage. I don't even know where that came from. I have Anita's in Rainy Day Gray. I'm putting way too much paint down on most of these, I think. This one is Pale Gray from Anita's. I've got paint all over myself again. Charcoal Gray. You can use more or less colors, whatever colors you feel like using for this. And this is our Woodsy Smoke, which I've used a lot lately. All right, so then I'm just going to take some egg cartons. Now the outside is there. We're doing the inside, the kind of rough side. And I'm just going to paint large areas of each color on various ones. I'm not going to use all of this on this project. I'm sure I'll have leftover. I think I've got plenty. I had an 18 count egg carton. I cut all the flat areas off the lid that I could salvage. So I'm going to, off camera, I'm going to paint all the pieces I've got with the various colors of craft paint. When they are dry, we'll be able to work with them. So it's going to be until paint dries before I come back. So I'll see you when everything is painted and dry. Alright, so this is all dry on the inside, hopefully, and off camera, I mixed up some more baking soda and paint. This time I just used some white craft paint. Excuse my mess on my tile. I'm going to clean it up after this step because this is going to be pretty messy. So this is, like I said, baking soda and white paint. I've got my same brush. Now I'm not going to leave this white when I get done. But I'm not sure how much of this mixture is going to take to cover the outside of my fireplace. So rather than trying to mix paint and match it, I'm going to use white and then I'm going to use make paint washes and put over to make this the color I want it. So again, I'm not going to put it on here, on this base. I'm only doing the plastic bottle. And I'm just going to, and this may very well take 2 coats. I'm going to try and keep it out of the opening, but I can always touch that up later if I need to. So I am going to spend some time here coating this in the white. And I said earlier I want to have a light, I want to block light because at some point in the future, I am going to create a fire that can go in here, and I'll figure out a way to make a fire go inside of this. And that's kind of my plan for a future project. But right now, we're not going to have it lit. So I am going to turn the camera off. I'm going to put this on this. If a little bit gets on that base, it's okay. I'm not covering the base right now. That's not my plan for right now. So I will turn the camera off. I will get this done. I'll see if 1 coat does it. I may have to do a 2nd coat. I will decide that when I get that far, and I'll let you know when I come back. Alright, I am fairly happy with this now. It's got 2 full coats, plus I did some touch-ups around different areas. So now I want to add some color. I think I talked earlier about the fact I just did white for this layer because I didn't want to have to try to match the color if I ran out, and I had to mix more paint and baking soda a couple of times. So now we are going to make a kind of a wash to go over it. I'm going to start with some white because I don't want to go very dark at first. I want to start with the same white, but then I'm going to warm it up with this golden sunset. It's a warm yellow, kind of a yellow ochre type color, and that will warm up this white and make it not so stark, not such a stark white. Where's my towel? I don't have my towel anymore. Also do not seem to have, okay, I'll use, what do I have in here? There's something to mix with. So I want to mix this together. And I want to get kind of a pale goldy color. That looks good. Now I'm going to add some water because I want to wash. I don't want a solid color on this layer, and I want a lot of water on this layer. We can add heavier layers of paint later, but right now I just want to add a very thin wash. I've got a big beat up old brush, and I'm going to start on the back in case I don't like it. That's fine. In fact, I think we could go with a little more water even. Thin it down just a little bit because I'm really not interested in having a lot of coverage right now. That's better. It's running, it's going to be runny and it's going to get all over everything. Me, the table, probably the floor, my shirt, my pants. I'm probably going to be wearing this color. So I am going to turn the camera off. I'm going to get this coated all the way. And when it dries, we'll come back and we'll decide what we are going to do for the next coat. Because this aging process is this process of putting some color, some age, some just character to this is going to be many layers of paint. So I'll be back when this is dry. All right, so here's what we've got so far. So now I'm going to do another wash. I'm going to start with the same golden sunset color that I used last time. I just rinsed my little bowl out, and I'm not going to need nearly as much. I'm not going to cover the whole thing. Then I have this woodsy smoke. This is what we used on some of those tiles that we're going to put on the hearth. So I'm going to use some of that. This keeps all our tones consistent. This way nothing looks like it doesn't belong. And I may use some of the plain woodsy smoke. I may do the yellow with a little of the darker brown. I haven't decided yet. I'm doing this one layer at a time, figuring out what I like, and then going on to the next layer. All right, now this is much darker than it was last time. So now I'm going to use this, and I'm just going to kind of brush this on. Yeah, I like that. And this is going to add depth, it's going to add character, it's going to make this look a lot more interesting. A solid coat of paint, while it covers, it isn't as interesting. It doesn't make it look as realistic. The more layers of paint you use, you can add depth, you can add texture, you can just make this look a lot more finished. So I'm going to turn the camera off. I'm going to just do a light wash of this over pretty much the whole thing. We'll do a selective wash on some darker colors later. But I'm doing a very light wash this time, so I'm not using nearly as much paint on my brush. So I'm going to turn the camera off, I'm going to finish this, I'm going to clean up, and then when this dries, I'll come back and we'll do a darker layer. All right, now that wash is dry, so let's go ahead and put another one on. This time we're going to use just the woodsy smoke. And I want to really impress upon you guys that this is a slow process. It's not something you can just slap a coat of paint on. Again, I mean, you could, but this, you can already see multiple colors here. And that's what I love. I love the layers of colors. And this is mostly water, just a little bit of paint. I might put on another coat of this a little thicker. I haven't decided. Let's try it in the back first. Trying to decide. As long as I dip into the more watery areas, I think I need a little more. Let's get just a drop more water in there. Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. I want it to just go kind of in the deeper spots. This one is really going to highlight our texture and make this make sure everybody knows it's not smooth. And I am taking pictures of this as I go. Each layer of paint as it's on, I've been putting a picture on, so you'll be able to see the progress on the blog post. So I am going to turn the camera off. I'm going to finish this coat, let this one dry, and then we will come back and do another layer. All right, here's where we are right now. And now for the next step, I'm going to thin down some of this burnt umber. This was also used on the egg cartons, so it will become the stone for the hearth. I'm going to put a blob of this, and this one I might have to work on a little bit off camera because I'm not sure how well the water's going to mix into it. because it is a much thicker paint. But that's okay. And for this one, I actually have a paper towel handy so that I can wipe excess off. All right, let's go to the back. And this you'll want to work in very small sections. That's what I'm looking for. So this, I just want it to kind of act as I want it to go into those crevices, into the nooks and crannies of our finish, and really highlight that this is not smooth. So this one's going to take me a few minutes to do. It's up to you how much you wipe off, how much you leave. We are going to come back with a black and do some sponge painting around the very top and around the opening on the front. So I am going to turn the camera off. I'm going to finish this layer up, get a good picture, and when this is dry, we'll come back and we'll add some basically smoke staining around the top of the chimney and around the opening on the front. So I'll be back when this is finished and dried. All right, here we are so far. It's looking old and rustic, and that's just what I'm looking for. I'm not even sure where I'm using this yet. It was just one of those ideas that I started to throw the bottle in. Literally, I was throwing the plastic bottle in the trash the other day and thought, oh, wait a minute, I can make a fireplace out of this. So that's why we're here. So now I have just some black craft paint. That's just the same black I used on the inside, but this time just the paint itself. And I have a cotton ball. And we're going to, I don't want to go too heavy. There may be a clean cotton ball. Let's get the cotton ball wet. While I don't want to remove all of it, I don't want to leave too much either. Because I want this to look like it's been used a lot. So right here in the around the opening, I want some black, basically black soot. And if at any point you feel like it's getting too heavy, take a wet cotton ball immediately before it has time to dry, and now up on the top. I want to make sure this top rim is black. And we can have a little bit of color showing, but not much. And then I am happy with that. I am going to use this and kind of touch up the inside though, because I do have some paint. All right, I am going to let this set up. Not that there's much to dry, but I want it as dry as possible, because I want to coat this with with some matte Mod Podge before we move on to our next step, which will be laying down the tile, the stonework down here. So I'm going to give this enough time that this won't smear when I come back and add some Mod Podge. So I'll be back when that's ready to go. All right, all that black paint has had time to sit. So now I've just got a soft brush. This is a 1-inch. It kind of looks like a chip brush, but it's not. Came in a set of brushes I picked up the other day. And this is just matte Mod Podge, and I mean, we've all Mod Podged. Probably don't even need to show this, but I'm just going to get it started. I am going to coat the whole fireplace, the top, everything I have purposely painted, not the base, in the matte Mod Podge. Then off camera, I am going to cut up these pieces of egg carton into some paving stones that I'm going to apply to this once the Mod Podge is dry on the top. So when this is dry and those are cut, I'll come back and we will start working on the hearth of our fireplace. All right, our Mod Podge is dry on this, or pretty much dry enough to go ahead and go forward. And I didn't mention why I Mod Podged this at this point. I did that to protect it from anything we do down here, because when we're working down here, we don't want to damage this that we've already done. So off camera, I also cut the egg carton pieces that I painted up into pieces. They are approximately 3/4 of an inch by an inch, give or take. They're not, I didn't want to have them absolutely perfect. Now we are going to start, I think I'm going to start with the rim around the front and the sides. And I am going to randomly place these. Now, I am not going to, I'm going to put them close together, but not completely together. I want to have a little bit of room for grout. And once I set this down, I've got this like in this position so you guys can see. So I've got a little too much glue there, so let's get some of that off. But I do need to set it down on its base, sitting correctly, so I can make sure that that is not, that these are going to line up with the ground properly. And we need to cut one. I'm going to put more of my color variations on the top than on the front. All right, so I am going to continue that off camera, but let's go ahead and get the top started. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing. Should have been smart and brought a wet wipe, and I didn't. And I'm only going to go as far as I can without this getting all squiggly around. Once these start shifting position, I'm going to stop for now and then come back once they dry for a while. So remember, the majority of my pieces are cut. Let's see, let's not start with a hole in there. I don't want to have that. I don't want the grout line to be directly above the one down there. Let's put a brown one here. And I'm going to have to cut the corner off. Now they don't have to be cut perfectly. We are going to be adding some grout. But I don't want grout lines to line up perfectly. And when I get all this area filled in, I'll come back and we'll do some small pieces. So I'll do a few more on camera, and then I'm going to turn the camera off and finish this up. This is a partial one. Let's put a black one there. All right, I am going to turn the camera off. I'm going to make sure these are all lined up with the bottom. I don't think you need to see me put every single one on. I'm going to get it basically filled in, but not work up to the fireplace on the sides. And when these are dry, I'll come back and we will fill in the areas that we didn't get yet. All right, off camera, I fit in a couple more pieces that were in these areas that need to be trimmed in to fit. And you can decide if you need them to be perfectly fit or if you want it to be, if it's okay if it's a little crooked. It's up to you. So all you need to do is kind of take your pieces. Now you could use a piece of paper as a pattern, or you can just kind of play it by ear. Let's see, I'm going to go. Let's start by trimming a piece on the corner. Now actually, I like how that fits, it just hangs over the back. So I'm going to go ahead and glue this one in. And then when the glue dries, I can trim it back. These on the edges are a lot easier to fit than the ones that are like here. So here we're going to have a little piece. So I'm going to look at some of my trimmed pieces that I've trimmed off. This one is almost the right size. A little bit more off. It doesn't have to be a perfect fit because we are going to fill the cracks in with grout. Take a little more off, just a tiny bit, and then put some glue in here. Don't get too much glue because you don't want to fill up what will be your grout lines with your tacky glue. And pretty much any glue will work for this step, a white glue, a tacky glue, whatever, as long as it doesn't melt the foam core. So I'm going to fit the last piece in here, and then when this glue is dry, I'll come back and we'll do our next step. All right, all the glue that's holding these down is dry completely now. So now it's time to give this a protective coat. Just like we protected our fireplace portion, we need to protect this from our next step. I could have waited to do this at the same time as the base, but for two reasons I didn't. Number one, it's easier to do this one piece at a time, one part at a time, because it leaves me someplace to hold on to. And also, I have had in the past times where I have actually had some of this paint rub off and make a mess. So I like to do them separately. It just took a few extra minutes to do, and this way I know everything is sealed separately. And once again, it's just a coat of Mod Podge, and this again is matte Mod Podge. I'm going to give a quick coat, trying not to get too much down in our grout lines. If I get too much in there, I'll probably come back with a cotton swab or something like that and clean it up. But this will now protect the surface of our stones from our grout process. So I'm going to get this done, I'm going to let it dry, and then I'll come back and we will put some grout in. Alright, our Mod Podge has dried overnight. I did a little trial over here to make sure this was going to work. It's time to grout our tiles now, our stone work that we've done. Now, just a side note, I'm not finishing the back on my fireplace right now because later on I want to come back and put a fire in here, which means I'm going to want to have access for wiring, and I'll probably come out through this area for my wiring. I'm not sure. So I'm going to leave the back open and unfinished, and then later I can go back and finish that. Now, what to use for tile grout? Well, you can use real tile grout. If you've got leftover grout from a project, you can use that. I've done similar tiles on the channel many times in the past, and it's very likely I've used a different material to grout my tiles every time because there's so many options. Use what you have. So real tile grout, that works fine. I've mixed caulking, acrylic caulking, and acrylic paint together. That works really well. Or what we're using today, baking soda and a acrylic based paint. This is actually what's the leftover that I mixed to do the foundation on the beachside bungalow. Remember how we put it in this jar with a lid and I said that way it would stay nice? I can use this. It's still good. And it has a very good texture for what I'm doing. So what I'm going to do, and this is why we sealed our tiles and our fireplace with matte Mod Podge. It protects them from this. But another thing is this will actually tone down the paint color just a little bit, because you'll have a little bit left on the surface most likely, and that's okay. I painted mine a little darker, a little more vibrant than I wanted them in the end. So now you lay it on, take a sponge works better, but I forgot to buy sponges the other day, so then you just wipe. And you might have to apply a couple of times and then use a dry paper towel or a dry towel to wipe. And just go back and forth, fill in, wipe, fill in, wipe some more, until you have the depth in between your pavers that you want. I may actually have to get a toothpick and work into this area, some of these little tiny areas around the fireplace, but that's okay. It's easy to do. I'm not going to bore you by doing this on camera. I'm going to turn the camera off and I'm going to get this done. When I get it done, and it's probably before it even gets dry, I'll probably come back as soon as I get this all on and show you the progress, show you what it looks like when it's done, so you kind of know what to expect. So I'll be back when this is all grouted. All right, that is all finished. Oops, I missed a spot. Darn it. I thought I had it all finished. Okay, I did find that going around the fireplace, I did need the toothpick. But probably good to show you that anyway, because there we go. Then I'm going to let that sit. I'm just going to wipe just the very edge of it away. There. All right, now I think it's done. But I love how that came out. Now we just need to wait for this to dry, and then we can look at the project in its completed form. All right, here is our finished outdoor fireplace. Well, finished for now. Like I've said earlier, we are going to come back and light this at a later date, but I love how this turned out. And you can see, because it's hard to get all of that grout off of the surface of the tiles, no matter what you use, you do end up leaving a slight film, and that's okay because it mutes down those colors and blends everything. I love this. I hope you enjoyed today's project. I can't wait to light this later on once I figure that part out. But I hope you enjoyed today's project. If you did, hit the like button, leave me a comment. If you enjoy my content and haven't subscribed, be sure and hit that subscription button and the notification bell so you know when I put up a new video. Check the blog post and the Facebook group for more information, and I will talk to you next time. Bye.